This is the Qatar Grand Prix review on the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits To Podium. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about everything in the race, including why we love Fernando Alonso, what happened between the Max versus Lewis fight, could the result have been different if Max didn't have a penalty, why we love Fernando Alonso, what happened to Pierre Gasly, why were McLaren a bit too slow, were Ferrari actually having a good weekend at the end or a bad one, why we love Fernando Alonso, how was the race at Qatar, Christian Horner's antics, if you can call it that way, with the stewards and whatnot, and as you guessed it, why we love Fernando Alonso. All of this and more on this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits to Podium. Let's begin. Hey folks, welcome back into the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits to Podium. My name is Soumil Arora, joined by Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team. Kunal, this is a circuit you or even Formula One has never visited before, and the expectations, honestly, of a good race over here were pretty dim. But I've only got two words to say: Fernando Alonso. Amazing.
I think the overall rating of the race would be better if we were to ask all the fans, just because Fernando Alonso got onto the podium after 7 long years. And I was listening in, as always, on the radio channel, and he actually said, I waited 7 years for this moment. The minute he crossed the line, that's what he said. So had it not been for Fernando Alonso, I think it would have been a fairly average race. Like Mercedes told Lewis that, overtaking isn't as hard as everyone expected it to be. There were cars that were moving around the place, moving around positions all the time. But yes, Fernando Alonso, what a drive, what a result. Incredible.
It's amazing. And about Fernando Kunal, instantly, right, okay, we can take a second to analyze the whole race after Fernando, right? It's been 7 years, so we can hold horses on that one. But with Fernando Kunal, there's always this big question. Why did Gasly not do that? Why did Gasly drop off? Why was Alonso able to hold on? And eventually, of course, the VSC helped Fernando Alonso to get the podium. But what an electric moment to see him on the podium, to see his elation, and even his message to Esteban Ocon, which didn't quite work out, but tell Esteban to defend like a lion. He couldn't, but Alonso drove like one. And even that start where he just blocked Max Verstappen off, classic Fernando, classic.
Just shows he's lost none of that. And if Alpine come up with a half competitive car next season, Fernando will make up for the other half. Literally speaking, that's what he's going to do. And all in all, I love how he approached the weekend. And he's had a fairly good run in. He's had good qualifyings, and suddenly he's been spun out at some point or tagged and so on. But specifically here, he was on the pace. And like he said, Alpine doesn't know why the Losail International Circuit suited their racing car. So hopefully they figure that out and they're able to make it work even in Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. Maybe it's the Middle Eastern flavor that appeals to the Alpine car. Who knows, So if that's the case, the next 2 races could very well be a treat. But you asked a very pertinent question. Why could Fernando make it work, and why could Pierre Gasly not make it work? So 2 reasons. Of course, Fernando was the highest finishing one-stopper. Extreme tire management, and it helped that P1 and P2 were so far ahead that he could just focus on his race and drive to his strategy, which was to make sure that he finishes on the one-stopper. But in the case of Pierre Gasly, and Gasly actually put it very well post-race. So he said, we had both cars starting ahead of the Alpines, but both the Alpha Tauris actually finished outside of the top 10. And he was on the radio post-race and he said, I did not have one single fast lap. If I would push, the tires would give up on me at the next corner. So he actually just had a lot of car setup and balance issues, is what I am assuming. But yes, we normally celebrate Gasly for having an invisible race. I'm so glad we are celebrating Fernando for having such a visible race in Qatar.
And it could have been so close at the end with Sergio Perez. Had that VSC not come in, things would have been literally so much different. And as you mentioned at the start, Kunal, maybe we wouldn't be rejoicing in this episode. Maybe we would have been saying, what if? But let's just take a second to put this into context, right? 7 years, Kunal. As David Croft instantly said on the Sky broadcast, the last time Fernando was on the podium, neither of Sainz or Verstappen were on the grid at that time as well. And that's just ridiculous. Nor Charles Leclerc, nor your Russells, nor your Norrises. But that's such a long while ago. In fact, that was the time when Bottas was at Williams, and Williams were actually a proper team. This is just crazy how much time has gone past. And the exciting flavor of Fernando is still there, as you mentioned. Nothing going away, and even at 40, that's crazy.
I wish he never hangs up his boots, just like Kimi Räikkönen, we were all wishing for, but Kimi, of course, does. And what I really like about Fernando specifically this season is he has returned to Formula One, but he has not found it tough at all to, put Esteban Ocon on the sidelines. And I don't think that's great advertisement for Esteban's talent. And Esteban, let's remember, he actually gave Checo Perez quite tough fight when they were teammates at Racing Point and Force India at that time, right? So, yes, Fernando, keep doing what you're doing. You're fantastic, and I really can't, wait to see how it all turns up in Saudi, because momentum is what he will be hoping works on him as well as his Alpine racing car.
But now, momentum is on Mercedes and Hamilton's side, and seriously, the fact that it's taken us around 6.5 minutes to get to Lewis Hamilton tells you what kind of a sublime drive he had this weekend. Just spot on. And by the way, if you just had to watch one piece of footage from the entire weekend, again, in my opinion, that is, just watch the qualifying lap of Hamilton, and especially the final couple of sectors, because the way he attacked every corner, it was a race. It was a race largely won in qualifying, and one wonders, Kunal, or one is equal to me in this case, at least I wonder, had the double waved yellow penalty hadn't come to Max Verstappen, would the result have been a bit different? Because eventually, as we saw, it was about track position, and once Mercedes had it, once they were able to build that gap in that first stint, in which Hamilton was superb, by the way, they just had to cover off whatever Red Bull was doing, and they did that fairly well.
They did that fairly well, I would say, and to put it into perspective in terms of Hamilton's qualifying lap, right? Firstly, 2 races in a row when Lewis Hamilton has actually had, a gap of more than 4/10 to the driver in second place. And that, to me, is incredible. And what was even more shocking was that Hamilton did not use his Brazil-introduced power unit or engine, since we know it was the ICE, in the qualifying in Qatar. So it was not just down to, Mercedes's power unit advantage or fresh power unit advantage, as one would think. And talking about Max Verstappen and his penalty, I must say, yes, the Red Bull camp have been very vocal about the whole, the marshalling that happened in Qatar, and did that sort of catch out Max Verstappen? I'm hoping there is some sort of more explanation towards that, because Sam Collins, the guy who hosts F1 TV Tech Talk, he said that Max's, steering dash did not have the message from race control. Okay. He did not have a message from the team saying there are double waved yellows. However, the Marshall post out there did wave the double yellows. So it's just about then seeing that, do you just react to any place you see yellow? Could it be a fan in the stands, sort of just waving a yellow flag, or what? But yeah, talking about the penalty, Max was pretty vocal as well after the race. He said, penalty or not, P2 is what we could have managed. So he was pretty happy. He was pretty chuffed after the race. He said, hey, I enjoyed the race. I'm glad I finished in P2, championship, damage limitation, as everyone's been calling it for the last 2 weekends. And I think it was just Lewis and his fantastic Mercedes that just gave him the race win. He was unchallenged, just sat in like a 7-8 second gap and didn't bother to do anything about it. And to be honest, starting where Max did, and then quickly finding himself up into P2 was pretty fantastic. He made a great start. He overtook Gasly, and then he overtook Fernando, and he was, suddenly where he should have been. And Max Verstappen still has the record of finishing either only in P1 or P2 in the race this entire season.
Damn.
20 races in. So he's either been P1, P2, or he's not finished the race, right?
My word.
And I think that's pretty incredible. And if we were to go back to his last no score, it was in Azerbaijan, where he was, of course, leading the race and would have had 25 points and whatever. So he is having a fantastic run this season. But the question has to be asked, should they be worried? Should they be like, oh my God, what's happening, Soumil?
I was thinking about that. Has Verstappen gone mature, or has he gone just plain boring? Because normally Max would okay, let me phrase this correctly. He would be pointing a few things out on the radio, right? That we're not doing this, we're not doing that, as Lewis did yesterday, right? He was asking questions even when they were in the most comfortable of situations. He was saying, well, maybe it's a bit too early to stop, so maybe I thought Max would do something like that. And Max previously has done that, so maybe there's an inclination towards seeing something like that happen. But he's been eerily calm and quiet on the radio, if one can call it that way. And in a way, it's good. One can call it the maturation of Max Verstappen. But this sort of quiet confidence, Kunal, is... I'm not sure what this is, but it's actually exciting for the last couple of races that if Red Bull are not panicked about anything at all, which frankly, if any of us would be in the same situation, we would be wondering quite a lot, or at least show a hint of it in the media. But they're not doing that at all. Instead, all they have to complain about is a marshal just causing a little bit of confusion with the flags. What's going on at Red Bull?
I think, to me, their calmness is a little eerie. It's like they have something in the bag and they know about it. And that's why they're just fairly confident that, we're in P2, and so what? Like, what's wrong if you're P2? And of course, it's not the P2 that should get them to panic. It's the fact that they're unable to challenge the Mercedes that's making everybody else panic. So either Red Bull know what they have in the bag, or they just are like, that's it, we have a lead. Lewis and Mercedes have to do all the catch up, which means they need to take all the risk, means they are on the pressure. They're on the limit more than we need to be, and we'll see where this goes. So it's a bit of both of that, I would say. But however, I think, the whole Red Bull drama is being amplified by Christian Horner's antics and shenanigans. He's like, okay, today is a new day. What's a new crass statement that I can make against Toto Wolff or Mercedes? Or he gives respect to Lewis Hamilton, of course, or to the FIA, and suddenly he'll find a mic and he'll have to say something which becomes like headlines. So maybe I tweeted about this, but maybe everyone needs to go tell Christian Horner that they can still win these world titles without him making over-the-top, emotional, headline-worthy statements every time a mic is shoved on his face.
Oh my word, that's true. Maybe something. Hang on. Maybe this must be something with the Red Bull in the team, because Helmut Marko also has a habit of saying stuff like that when he's in the media, right? We've often known him to be a bit different when he's not interacting with the media, but otherwise, Helmut Marko can be a bit tricky with that as well. But before we get into Sergio Perez, Kunal, your genuine thoughts on the whole yellow flag kind of thing. I know we spoke briefly about it early on a couple of minutes ago, but it really seemed confusing, because in our own WhatsApp group as well for Pits To Podium and the Inside Line F1 podcast, we were discussing, well, is it a yellow or not? Because Bottas and Max improved, but there were yellow flags. How do you look at this whole incident as such?
Like I said, at the end of the day, it seems like there was a bit of a mismatch. I think calling him or her a rogue marshal is a step too far, right? Why did race control messaging not show up the way it did on track? And of course, Michael Masi has taken the side of the marshals, just as he should, because marshals are volunteers. They give thousands of man hours, through the whole year for every motorsport category, so that we can go and have safe racing. But he went and he, of course, said, that marshal thought that there was a risk on track, and that marshal then decided that the yellow flag had to be waved, and that's what the drivers have to respect. And yes, that sounds like the way it should be, but I don't know why, of course, then it did not function the same way with race control as well, right? So it's like for the 19 races this year, if there was a sync between what race control and the marshals were doing, suddenly on the 20th race, if that's off sync caught out, Verstappen and Bottas, it's of course something that their teams, or especially in this case Red Bull, would highlight. That's my reading.
Yeah, and Rogue may be a bit too harsh, right? Especially, I mean, of course, he won't be thinking about it, but it was also the World Volunteers Day in terms of motorsport as well. So that's a bit of a bad timing kind of situation with Christian Horner. But bad timing was, I think, the word used by everyone everywhere with Sergio Perez's strategy, Kunal, because really, it seemed like Red Bull wanted to make it hard for him. Of course, now, two ways to read this. One way to read this is, of course, as I mentioned, Red Bull were deliberately trying to make it hard for him because after his first pit stop, he came right behind Sebastian Vettel. In the second one as well, he had to fight all the way back. But the other way of looking at it would be that they relied on him to make overtakes as it was becoming increasingly easier. Which way do you look at this? And I mean, at least in my take, again, hindsight is really powerful, and this is a nice, comfy chair. It's a lot comfy than the strategists one that they have, strategists one that they have on the track. But in hindsight, it may seem like they kind of made it harder for themselves. No, they could have had that podium, to be honest. Not that we would like it, but still.
The thing is, Checo Perez starting P11 is actually why his strategy was compromised first up. Okay, that's my reading, because so that he could be in a faster car, so that he could make all the overtakes, so that he would jump other drivers who were on a one-stopper, they had to put him on a two-stopper. And this, of course, started with them having a relatively short first stint of just 19 odd laps that he had on that particular compound, right, on the medium compound. And then to expect a Checo Perez, who is, of course, known as the master of tire management, to go the other, if he's to go the other 30 odd laps on the hards, was probably a little too much, I would say. And Red Bull, after a point, just realized that if he is able to overtaking is easier on track. There is a significant delta advantage that Checo Perez has in terms of an advantage to the other drivers. Then why not have him overtake cars on track? And he actually did that. I think he doubled his overtaking number of overtakes he's made in the season. Whoever's keeping a track of that, he doubled that in the race in Qatar. And could he have been on the podium? Yes. Had there not been a virtual safety car, maybe he would have fought Alonso. We would have loved to see Alonso fight and keep that podium against a Perez. But all in all, I think him just starting in P11 put Red Bull in a slightly off spot to try and make a single stopper work, I would say, Soumil.
And how else do you read a P11 in qualifying as, other than P11 in qualifying? It was just not a very good lap eventually. And so sad to see that being compromised. But even still, I think he could have got there again. The VSC came right there in the middle, right? So it's not like they really miss out on a lot. It just would have been a little bit easier for them eventually. But tyres, Kunal, that was one thing you briefly mentioned about 30 laps and that window of the tyres. It's crazy because there were so many tyres exploding. Again, if you saw the race, you saw that there were at least 3 or 4 punctures in the race, then Gasly in qualifying. And again, the reason behind that is the curbings, Kunal. But how odd is it that it's also the hard tyres and a couple of mediums as well, and both in a similar range around 30? Weren't the hards supposed to last a little bit longer and supposed to be a little more durable in that sense?
I think, it was a mix of course, F1 not having raced here, lots of lots of forces being put through the cars, since the high-speed sections are, what everyone enjoyed so much at the Grand Prix. And then, of course, the curbs, especially the exit curbs that we've seen, for example, what Gasly hit, right? And it was just a mix of all of that. And which is probably why Checo Perez was also made to pit twice, because Red Bull realized it's best to, with Bottas out of the running, it's better for them to just make sure that Checo gets a great result in terms of points for Constructors' Championship
Yeah.
than to risk a DNF and so on. But yeah, you're right. The tires should have lasted a little longer. Especially, with the way Nicolas Latifi and Valtteri Bottas, both of them actually turned around and said, I had enough grip and the tire just gave up without any warning. That's to me the scarier part. But that's also, sort of what happened to Lance Stroll and Max Verstappen in Azerbaijan as well. So it's just how the Pirelli tire goes, I guess, unfortunately.
Yeah, a bit sad to see so many races being compromised the way it was, and one wonders what could have happened. But especially in the case of McLaren, Kunal, because that's a point where we saw things go a bit iffy in the last few races, and it's gone even worse. And talking about McLaren makes me want to start off with Ferrari in this case, because there's a very interesting discussion going about whether you can place Ferrari as a winner in this race or a loser, because pace-wise, they really were nowhere. Alpine and AlphaTauri in qualifying were better. And yeah, McLaren, in some parts, McLaren with Lando Norris were faster as well, but they eventually salvaged a pretty decent result. So would you classify them as winner or loser today? Of this weekend, rather?
I would say that Ferrari, and I'm just reading the results out here, they scored P7 and P8. Of course, you all know that. That's equal to 10 points, right? That is their second lowest score in a Grand Prix in 2021. That is if they've scored points. So, of course, in France, as we all know, they did not score points. But in Portugal, they finished P6 and P11 and they scored 8 points. So, to me, Ferrari could have actually done better, but it was probably just the nature of the circuit that caught them out. But frankly, at this stage of the championship, Ferrari would just have been very, very pleased that they outscored McLaren by 8 points. And, McLaren, just again, a bit of bad luck, I would say, because Lando Norris had a late race puncture. He had to pit, otherwise he was pretty confident he would have finished P4. And then Daniel Ricciardo had the weirdest race issue that I have, probably heard of in the last several years, I would say. He was in fuel-saving mode for pretty much all race. That's what he said. And that's what the team, of course, has backed him up as well. And then when he was saving fuel, he was asked to save even more fuel. And then, of course, they think that it was down to just incorrect calculations or worse, data collection. And, Daniel actually said after the race that I was driving in fuel-saving mode for so long that after a point, I just had cold tires and cold brakes and everything else. And I had just nowhere to go. And it's just unfortunate that that's how it just turned out for Daniel Ricciardo. And, I'm going to now throw up the race fastest laps. And I just want to make sure that, like, for example, Daniel Ricciardo was only 14th fastest. That too only on the 50th lap of the race. So that was when, after a point, he said, you know what, guys, I'm just going to go and try my race and we'll see where it goes. So just very, very unfortunate for Daniel Ricciardo and, of course, then for McLaren, because they are now almost 40 points adrift from Ferrari.
And honestly, they haven't been that bad as well, right? It's just a couple of bad races where things haven't gone their way. And honestly, same with AlphaTauri as well, because in both the fights, Kunal, that we proclaimed to be the best fights of the year after Lewis and Max, and we thought that this is going to be the one that entertains us. If that one doesn't, both of them are gone. 2 races left to go. And it's like the Formula One gods, if they exist, just want us to focus on one thing and one thing only. And that's why all the other battles are clearing up.
They're all clearing up, and it's just, they're saying, that's it, just watch Max and Lewis, because P3 seems settled in Ferrari's favor, like you said. P5 after yesterday, it's going to be settled in Alpine's favor as well. That's almost 25-point gap Alpine has pulled up.
Yeah.
And there's still one battle, which I hope, again, settles in the correct direction. Nikita Mazepin is 21st in a 20-driver championship. Robert Kubica, in just 2 races, managed to, sneak up into 20th place. So let's see if Nikita is able to strike back.
And of course, you might be wondering how, because both of them don't score points, but that's just based on their best results, right? And what was Kubica's best results? Well, we'll find out. But Kunal, before we just finish
14th.
off, 14th. Let's see on that one.
In context, Mazepin has finished 14th. It was in Azerbaijan. But Kubica's 14th was in Monza.
Yeah.
And before that, in Sanford, Kubica was. So it's just that Kubica sneaked up ahead. And after that, of course, Mazepin has got 18, 20, 17, 18, 17, 18. So there we go.
He's racing with himself, right now. It's like a ghost lap kind of thing where you can see Robert Kubica, but he's not quite here. This is fun. But before we wrap off, Kunal, a thought and a word on Lance Stroll and Aston Martin, because finally a good result for them after what feels like ages now. This is a bit of a relief of really what's been a terrible year for them so far.
It is. He scored. He was P6. I think he drove a pretty good race as well, especially after the start, and he made a single stopper work for himself, which is good. And it's not fairly often that Lance Stroll has such great races. And he scored for P6. He got 8 points, which is his highest ever score in a Grand Prix this season. Right, so it is his best finish that he scored, and then. Races like these are when you believe what on earth is Sebastian Vettel up to, because he just got P10 and 1 point, and that's about it. So it's just how it goes with the Aston Martin team, I would say, Soumil.
Yeah, Vettel got stuck in behind Bottas, and things really got complicated over there. But complicated it is not until the end of the season. Essentially, winner takes all right down to the very end. 8 points, if I'm not mistaken, the gap, whatever it is. Yeah, it's pretty close, that one, heading into Saudi Arabia. Finally, Kunal, a word to describe this race and your final thoughts on this weekend before we wrap up for today.
I think it was a very good inaugural race for Formula One in Qatar on track. It wasn't a boring race as we all thought it would be. And like we've spoken over the last 25 odd minutes, right? There were several battles that happened, even if there wasn't a battle up front. And I also loved how, Football World Cup was being promoted at a Formula One Grand Prix. There was a goal to grid or a grid to goal competition, footballers versus drivers in a penalty shootout that happened on Saturday. We had David Beckham, and then we had Stefano Domenicali, posing with two gentlemen, one with the Formula One World Championship trophy and the other with the FIA World Cup trophy. So the most popular trophy in the world of sport, which of course to me is the Formula One World Championship trophy, was promoting the FIFA World Cup football trophy this weekend. So all in all, a very good weekend, Soumil. And you have to tell me what was your takeaway from there as well.
A takeaway from this final presentation thing was that the Qatar GP trophy actually looks better than the World Cup because it's a bit bigger, feels more grander, right? But again, it's a take that could get me into trouble, but then I hold myself accountable for it. Just my thoughts, but also, fun thing to take away. I never knew that Qatar's national anthem was so much fun to listen to. That Daniel Ricciardo was having a fun time with it as well, and he was just dancing along to it, which basically describes the weekend for me. Qatar, we didn't know would be surprisingly pleasant. And it was pleasant. And Fernando Alonso made it better. Eventually, I think everyone left with a big smile over there. And if Max Verstappen can leave that place with a big smile, so can you, right? So that's good fun, all things around for this weekend. But folks, thank you for listening to this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits to Podium. See you for the Saudi Arabian GP. If the track is ready, by the way, we're still not sure about that. So let's wait and see how that goes. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this episode, Kunal. We shall see you in a little bit.
Bye-bye.